What is up, everybody, man? Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Expert Mentors Live. We've got, we do have an official honey badger back on the Expert Mentors series with us, Miss Michelle Humes. How are you?
Good morning. I guess it's afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Good to see you again. Thank you, for carving out the time and jumping in and really, what the whole Expert Mentor series is really all about. And it's really tapping into the horsepower and the talent and the leadership, the innovators that we have within the Honey Badger Nation, 14,000 strong and growing. And, there's there's so many amazing people like yourself that just love to pour and give back. And, that's the whole goal and intent of this series and these conversations. And, I know today's going to be no different. I appreciate you jumping in and going to dive into.
That's crazy. 14,000.
14,000. Yeah, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. And, you look at the amazing talent throughout the whole EXP, global community, some of the best, right? If you go and one of the cool things that I like what they've added to inside of EXP to where you can go see the leaderboards and you go look at those teams and the leaders and it's like, wow, there's a honey badger. Wow, there's a honey badger. And it's just really cool to see. And I believe it's because of collaboration like this, like you willing to jump in and share kind of where you're seeing things, how you're navigating these waters, which are quite interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So Michelle, give a little bit of background. I mean, like I said, there's so many honey badgers. I know you've been on here with us before and will be on with us again in the future. It's just really give kind of a little bit of a background so people can get a little understanding and be able to connect with you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being on and just always a pleasure to spend time with you and be with honey badgers. So I'm from a little town called Peachtree City, Georgia, just south of the Atlanta airport. We kind of are on the map originally because Delta Airlines is nearby at the Atlanta airport. Chick-fil-A headquarters are in our little town. And now we have the largest movie studio outside of California in the world in our backyard. That Chick-fil-A was very heavy in helping come here. They film Marvel here and all kinds of interesting things. But my background is I'm from a absolute family of school teachers. My mom, my aunts, all of my families were teachers. And so I set out to become a school teacher here in our county. And in my senior year, I went to the University of Georgia. I met my now husband singing in an opera. I had a little part in our student production opera, and he was like the hired in New York City big role.
He was the hired gun.
And I went home and I said, I think I have found someone that I like, and I'm going to ask him out for Valentine's Day. And I went to ask him out and he asked me out first, which actually worked out great. But we ended up getting married and I moved with him to New York City, quit my teaching job after a year. I taught high school chorus here in there's two high schools, the one that I didn't go to, but the other one, and moved to Manhattan. And not like 2 weeks after we moved there, his manager called and he'd won a big competition at the Metropolitan Opera, which is very prestigious. And he actually has a really cool story as well. And he's in the middle of getting his real estate license. So that's kind of fun too. He's going to help us build our Honey Badger Nation with me. So anyway, his manager called, he was in Germany and there was an opportunity to go sing there full time. Long story short, he went there, got the job. We ended up having to sell everything. We moved with 2 suitcases each. I was 23 years old. To Munich, Germany, and we stayed there for 12 years. And why do I tell you that? Why is that interesting? Because that time in my life, you can imagine, like I'd never lived in the same state with him. I'd never lived with him. We dated long distance. And then all of a sudden I have to move to Europe. I can't work. There's no work visa for me. We have no family. We have no children. We don't know anyone. Right. And it changed me. It made me this different person over the course of a decade. I learned to be very uncomfortable and how to navigate in uncharted waters. I would have, if you'd told me like the year before that was going to happen, I would have said, you're crazy. That's
Right.
not even going to happen. And I'm not going to do it anyway if that's the offer. So as I look back on that time now, we had our first baby there. When I was pregnant with our second baby, we decided we were going to move back to America because I just did not want to live in 700 square feet for the rest of my life. And my girlfriend said to me, you've always been so fascinated with real estate. I think you should I was on Groupon and you should get a real estate license.
Of course.
Of course. Why wouldn't I? You can do it part-time, all the things they tell you. You can do it part-time, you can supplemental income. So I really did get into it to really change our financial future, but I thought it would just be little by little and a little contribution. And current day, we have completely switched roles. He stays home with our kids. He supports us with our team and the team that we've built. And I run the team. And it's just been a wild ride. That has only been almost 8 years ago. And our team is now we have 20 something agents, full staff. We'll sell several hundred homes this year. We sold 250 homes last year. So it depends on what the market does. We'll see what we sell this year. But yeah, completely different course of what I thought was going to be my life as a teacher. And yet I still get to use all of those skills in very interesting ways embedded into real estate and into helping change the lives of our teammates and help them to make a living. So it's been a fun ride.
I love that. Right. Me growing up, same, coaches, my dad was in the public school system for over 40 years. So it's just kind of hardwired DNA and definitely was one of the things that crossed my mind. And it just, it's just like, I just know there's more out there, right? I just know there's a bigger life. Not saying, anything against our teachers, but just the financial opportunity. There's just with that skill set, I just believe there's a greater opportunity. But for some, that's their purpose, that's their calling.
Absolutely.
And being able to pour in and impact, it comes back down to impact. It comes down to transformation, and it comes down to being just, that servant heart, to be able to pour into others and being able to carry that skill set, into another vehicle, another opportunity, for you. And so I love it. And so Michelle, kind of, navigating and I want to, not spend too much time kind of early on, but kind of get to where we're at and some real, tactical things that people can latch onto to help them either, continue their path this year or a little navigational change. And as we, kind of get to this halfway point of the year, we've always held firm to the belief, get to halftime and then, take a real hard assessment. What have we learned? What's the game unfolding in front of us? And then what corrections do we need to make? And I know I know you don't want to hear this, especially for you Falcons fans, but what was it? 28-3, halftime. And, you're never out. And you can get and win right at the end of the game. And so team wise for you, because you guys have just boom, have seen some great growth, but kind of right before that growth, what was driving it? And then we're here now, right? And kind of what adjustments and what's the same and what's different?
Well, it's a great question. I had an agent call me the other day, and he is not quite as far along in his team building journey as I am. And he said, it's just so messy. I ask people to call the leads and they call them once and they don't call them anymore. And I just don't even know where to go with this. And I said, the truth is, no matter what part of the journey of your success that you're on or your career, it's always going to be messy. And I think watching the current day real estate market unfold, it's almost like you can't keep up with what is going to happen. And I think for all of us watching in different parts of the nation or the world, it's not the same for everybody. So it might be different in Georgia than it is in California or in Texas or Massachusetts. And so really just being able to pivot and being able to identify areas where either there's waste or where we're not focused, to me, that's a huge part of my day. Now, if we're talking teams, I would say last June, I became acutely aware that it was time to slash expenses. And I remember going into my assistant and saying, print all of the print everything that we spend money on. I need it in front of me, and I need the last 6 months. And I went through and line itemed every single thing that was not personnel and was not, that in a 2021 market, it didn't matter as much. Now, shame on me that I wasn't being that critical in that time, but I knew that with every passing moment, if I didn't take action and pivot, that it was going to cost us. And it would, in my situation, it would cost us in the way of opportunities for the agents or staff. Without a great staff on a team, you don't really have as much of an offering. You might have leads, but you got to help these people have leverage to close deals. So I knew we had to preserve them and make sure that we were just getting rid of the things and the systems and the shiny objects that don't necessarily help us get families closed and people closed, and get back to the basics of sometimes the monotonous things that we have to do in order to have big results at the end of the year. Big results don't happen because you buy all these fancy things, or like shiny objects, we like to call them, right? Yeah. They happen because you do the monotonous day, step upon step upon step thing that add up to big results. I liken it to CrossFit. I'm in CrossFit now. Whoever thought? Right? Every time I go there, I'm like, this is horrible. It's horrible. Yeah. I don't know how to do it. I can't climb the rope. I don't know what the lifts mean, right? But every time I get stronger. And so it's the same thing with building a business, or building, even pivoting in a market that is kind of unknown for all of us. And not being afraid to just say to yourself, okay, today I'm going to get up again and be grateful and see the positive, and then pivot when I need to.
Yeah. You said a couple of things there that I want to definitely unpack, but I want to hang around the numbers and the financials, because, 11 years of this coaching stuff, right? Been licensed since January of 2005, got to ride through that market, got to ride through, all these different markets and small towns, big towns, coaching people all over the world. The number one thing that I would say that stands out the most is just the financial ignorance that most real estate agents have. They just don't understand or know the basics of, a P&L and knowing their numbers. So for you, kind of share a couple things. One, when you were looking at the numbers to start, what were you using to make the financial decisions of what to cut and what to keep? And then coaching your team and your agents, how do you educate them on understanding their numbers and what they need to be paying attention to? And also, outside of the business expense, personal expenses, and how do we structure that, kind of in this time and then moving forward? To me, this is the moment of defense, right? I'm pro offense, but you've got to also have a little bit of a, I don't want to say world class, but you've got to have a great defense. Your offense can be world class and overcome any deficiencies there. So this little bit of defense that we're going to talk about here, like, what did you look at? How did you base decisions? What metrics did you look at to say yes or no? And then how are you coaching and educating your team around their numbers?
Well, I'll start with the team and the P&L. I agree with you. I don't think the bulk of agents in the industry even have a P&L, and I would encourage everyone to get someone to help you learn how to do that, because it's so valuable to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers to know where you're going, where you've come from. Even before I had a team, I had a P&L. I knew what things cost so that I could forecast, and so that we could look in the past, right? I have the great privilege of having an accountant for a father. So it's so funny as an entrepreneur to come home and say, I'm making these hires. And he looks at me and he's like, because his job is to look at the moment here and backwards. As an entrepreneur, we have to look at the numbers. We have to be aware of what happened, but then we have to really look forward to say, okay, if we're here and we want to be there, this is the money that we've got to spend in order to do that. And I definitely think, and I'm going to come back to this, but I think scarcity around money is one of the number one things that I see agents and even teammates struggle with. So I'll come back to that. But what did I cut and keep? I really follow the MREA model. Gary Keller wrote a fabulous book. I usually spend more on advertising. So I have not cut advertising, marketing. Now that includes anything from our ISAs to our moving vans that advertise, obviously, our brand on the side, to mailers, to, online Google pay-per-click, whatever it is. Those are all in different buckets, but they're all advertising buckets. And we spend, our goal is to spend 15% of our gross commission on that. Our staff budget is between 10 and 12%. We have not cut that. That's right. That's very healthy right there. And because things have slowed down slightly, but we have managed to cut other things that did not affect lead flow and that kind of thing for our team. We've done okay. Overall gross revenue obviously is down, but we're still profitable. So those are the things that I decided to keep. And actually I upped the budget. We have less full-time agents than we had this time a year ago, and we're spending more money now than we were then. Why? Because interest rates are up, buyer pool is down. Quite frankly, it's a new buyer pool, right? And so we've got to find more people to talk to. And it's a numbers game. So that's the big areas that I'm focused on.
I love that. And so I'm going to just hang out right here for just a second. You know me, I geek out on these numbers all day long, and it's like, it's cringe. Like it's like nails on a chalkboard to a lot of people and a lot of agents. However, it's like, you don't need to know it all. There's just a few things that you need to like pay attention to. And you gave two good numbers. That 15% of marketing, we've really adopted and followed a lot of what Greg Crabtree teaches in his book, Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits. For all of you guys listening, that book right there, just following his principles and his salary cap formula, I want you guys to catch this and write this down. Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits, Greg Crabtree. We dove into that book and we went from a negative 3% net profit before taxes. And we were wondering why we were running on fumes and we just couldn't quite figure it out. We went and where we followed his model of the salary cap in these numbers, these percentages, Michelle, that you're sharing, which is invaluable for everybody listening in. And we got within our salary cap range, and within about, this was in Q4, and before we got, because we were doing quarterly masterminds and we were showing up and we were reporting our numbers, and we're talking, the Jeff Cooks, the Lars Hedenborgs, the John Mikishes of the world in our mastermind, and we're opening our books and teaching them what we're learning. And we got to fourth quarter, before halfway point of the year, we came back for our mastermind. We were at about 14% positive net profit before taxes. That's a 17% turnaround. You're like, well, that's no big deal. Well, it is a big deal when you're doing 300 to 400 transactions and your average sales price is 120,000. That is a big swing.
Wow.
But all it was, Michelle, was we got within a framework. And I think that's where agents don't understand. They just don't understand a framework to be able to allocate the dollars that they have. So I love that. And Greg's number is about 10%. He said 10% towards marketing, 15%. I love even more, because if you're spending that on things that's working, that allows you to grow 10%, 12. The number that I want to get out of you, what is the profit number? What is the profit percentage?
So it is 24%. And I can pull what ours is current year to date, but last year we ended probably around 22%, because you remember last year was going strong all the way into where it was like third quarter, when things kind of just fell, the interest rates went up, the market drastically changed, at least in our market. And it took some time to make the adjustments there in the budgeting to allow. But my goal is 25%.
Love it.
I think
what's your average sales price?
406,000.
So one of the things that we learned through this is that you kind of have to make those adjustments based upon average sales price. So I love your 25% when you're, 350 and above. If you're below that, I think you're probably closer to the 15% is healthy.
And I think 25 is hard to get to. You have to be really good with, and it sometimes can cost you. So to me, I'd rather end closer to 20 or 22. I'm totally fine there. 25 would be my goal, or somewhere between 22 and 25. But the more people you add and the more agents you have, it's very hard to keep it, I think, above there. That's just. I
think, what we're talking about is, Mike Maklowitz's great book, Profit First, right?
Mm-hmm.
Profit first, you have these buckets, you have your profit bucket, you have your marketing bucket, you have your people bucket. and you have your operational expense bucket. And so you have the different 4 buckets. Great. What I've kind of learned to adopt over the years is kind of a modified profit first. Take what Gary talks about in the Red Book, take about what Crabtree talks about in his methodology, his framework with small business. And then you take in, Maclowitz, and you get a modified version. And it's everything that you're saying right here is absolute gold, guys listening in. And this is the very first thing that I mean, if you don't have a percentage allocation and create a budget, this is what Michelle's telling you guys, create an actual working budget that you look at consistently. And we look at a budget versus actual. So we set the budget, we look at budget versus actual, and we review the P&L and looking at those numbers. So thank you for being open and sharing those numbers, because it's so important. Let's stay on the money for a second. Two things. One, you talked about the importance of being able to forecast.
Yep.
And I think it was Peter Drucker might have even talked about it. He's like, when you look at your numbers, you want to spend about 25% on what has happened and 75% on what is going to happen. So get really good at forecasting. Like, I believe everybody on this call should know, how much money do you have coming to the company after your splits to agents, brokers, fees? How much money, company dollar, do you have coming in the next, so here we are, the beginning of May, like we know what our cash position is going to be at the end of May and at the end of June. Like we know right now, if we didn't put another deal on the board, everything kind of closed out the way it is, what's our cash position going to be going into the second half of the year? So I wanted to kind of throw that statistic out there as an old Peter Drucker statistic. But you said something that's super important, that I think none of this matters, right? This is all the outer, these are all the tools, these are all the frameworks. None of this matters, Michelle, unless what you said, it's the psychology and their mindset around money. That has to come first, right? Right things, right order. They have to unlock that understanding first. Unpack that a little bit. Please share, because this is good.
It's so interesting. So I mentioned my father earlier. And so to give some framework around my team's history, I started the team in 2018. I'd never bought internet leads before, but I had so much business of my own sphere business that I really needed to bring in a showing partner or a buyer's agent, that kind of thing. So 2018 is when I started my team. I didn't really know about how to scale a team, or, that's the unfortunate part about us when we build teams, that no one has taught you to build a team. And so you're building this team while you're flying the plane at the same time. That's a great way to put it. That's how I feel. And it still feels that way most days, right? I mean, it doesn't feel quite so horrible some days, but some days I'm like, okay, I could have just been an individual agent and be just fine. Alas, here we are. But I think it's interesting because my father, who I mentioned, is an accountant. So I come by math kind of naturally. Music and math, they gotta go together. And so I would come home and say, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. My parents live with us, by the way. That's why I keep saying I come home, because they live in the back house, and we have dinner together every night, and we talk business. And we, like this morning, he said, EXP numbers are up. They reported numbers, and your stock's going up. And this is the kind of thing we talk about. But when you have, from 18 to 21, we had 406% growth. Mm-hmm. And it is very hard to know how to forecast and know how to plan when you don't know what's going to happen. Right. And I say that because every day that I coach, so I coach our lead agents, and our lead agents coach our other agents. So I coach our lead agents, and we look at their pipeline, and we'll talk about what's holding you back from that next deal, or what's holding you back from those hours of lead generation that you really need, or what's holding you back from being able to do that open house. And I'll hear answers like, well, I don't have childcare, or I would have to make arrangements, or I'd have to do this, or I'd have to do that. And ultimately, it always comes back to being okay with spending money. And it's just such an interesting thing. It's an interesting concept. So I'm 43 years old. I was taught, this is the accountant daughter, you don't have a soda at the restaurant, you have a soda at home, because you don't pay for that in the restaurant, right? So if you're taught that, turns out you can be pretty good with money, which is great. It's a great skill to have. But the truth is, we are all self-employed entrepreneurs, and we have to be okay with not knowing where our next paycheck is going to come from. We have to be okay with risk, right? We can't be risk adverse. We have to say, I'm going to take a step of faith out and take a leap and spend this kind of money. And I'm talking maybe towards somebody who wants to spend some money on marketing that's never done that before, because they're thinking, I'm going to either pay for one of my kids' things or I'm going to have marketing, and, and if I spend this on the marketing, I'm going to have this for my kids that I need. It's hard. But taking that leap of faith and then doing the activities every single day to be able to back it up. I teach a class for at EXP in the world it's called Housewife to House Hustler. And it's all about a schedule. Like I spend the whole class talking about how important it is to schedule properly. And the truth is, if you'll be okay with planning that vacation and putting the deposit down, guess what? You're going to work hard enough to be able to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
But it's a mindset, right?
It is all mindset. Are you a fan of Ryan Holiday? Obstacle is the way, ego is the enemy. Have you dove into much of Ryan's stuff?
No, but I'm going to write it down.
He's very he's kind of the forefront leader on Stoicism and really Marcus Aurelius and really just all the works of the great Stoics. And he's by far my favorite. And so anytime, he has a bookstore in just outside of Austin, but he threw a book up, it might've been just because of conversations like this. And it was a conversation I had. It was a conversation Alex Piak and I were maybe a couple of cocktails deep and kind of getting into, we were talking about our parents and we were talking about their relationship to money. And so it was just, it's crazy, right? When your mind's thinking about it, you start to see things. And I just remember seeing that post with Ryan. He recommends books all the time, and I don't dive into it, but I saw this one, and it was he said probably one of the most important books you can read, and it's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Okay.
And what Morgan, he breaks down inside of there, he said your relationship to money can be traced to when you were born and what was going on in the economic climate in which you were born into.
Right.
And so if you were born into a time of a recession, if you were born in time of a high inflation, you're going to be born into certain things, right? Like how that impacts you. And so, I've got a few years on you, but you look at it like our parents and when they were born and the who, not how concept, Dan Sullivan breaks this down in there as well. And it's like, when you grew up in like our parents and some of our grandparents, what they grew up in, right? Coming out of the into the 50s and the 60s and what was going on at that time. You have to understand that, right? What were they born into? What were they exposed to? Usually goes into their whole thinking and belief system. And so he really unpacks that, right? So I just remember my dad, every time we would talk, he would bring up gas prices and he would ask, what are gas prices? And here's me, right? Like, I don't give a shit what gas prices are. Like, I don't even pay attention to it. I just go gas up and go. Yeah. Like, I don't even look. I just gas and go. And it's just funny, understanding that psychology of money. So, and I hear a lot of people, and you probably coach, your team on this, and they're like, why am I so bad with money? It's like, you just don't understand what caused you to have that belief around money. And if we can create an awareness, then we can make some changes. But I think the visibility that you're talking about helps with it all, right? If you're able to see it and know where your numbers are, where your money's going, then that reduces that anxiety, that stress, and allows you to make better decisions around it.
Yeah. And I think having a formula, this is where numbers, and we go down to the micro part of numbers. I know I need to have this many conversations to result in this many appointments that result in this many contracts. And I always tell my agents to back it out because they receive more leads than they can even know what to do with, but they need to know, okay, I'm a really high converter, so I can have this many conversations that's going to result in a paycheck. But it's those steps you must know in order to do it. And so like for me, I have to think about it from the 30,000 foot view. How many agents do I need to make that happen? Because agent count, of course, on a big team is so important. So yeah, the psychology of money is super interesting. There are moments where I wake up and I think, like last night, I don't really produce much anymore because I spend most of my time coaching the others. But I had a buyer from several years ago pop back up, and it's $1.5 million deal, and she wanted to go see this house, and we've been in due diligence for a couple of weeks. It terminated. well, it's $40,000 commission, something like that, maybe more than that, and I could have let that really like, ooh, there's payroll. And of course, those thoughts come to my mind. But the truth is, what you focus on is what you will find. And if you focus on finding another deal or focus on how you can help others, you're always going to find more. So I choose to try to stay in abundance. And even in a market like what we're in now, turn off the news, stay in abundance, stay in giving your money away. I mean, the minute I start thinking about stuff, I go find somebody at the school system to give money to and donate to. So, I think money just makes people more of what they were already.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
So
It does. It exposes who you really are.
Yeah.
I think is all it does, right? When there is none, it exposes who you really are. When you're in abundance of it, it exposes who you really are. I really believe that. So Michelle, let's shift gears. Okay. We've played a little defense here. And now we're shifting to the offensive side of things. And you talked about, committing and getting into CrossFit and like one hand up on the rope. And then, you go back and the next time you do the rope, you're able to get two hands.
Yeah.
And that comes around, I believe from a consistency standpoint. So when now we played a little defense and talking with agents and being able to pour it not only into your team, but everybody listening to this conversation, where do they need to start playing, being consistent in their activities moving into today's market?
Well, I think today's market demands agents who really care and agents who are masters. So mastery in any given one area is going to become even more important than it's ever been. 2 years ago, you could walk outside and someone would let you sell them a house. Today, it's not quite the same environment going on. But what I do know to be true is that and I was not in real estate in the last downturn. You have that benefit, John, of having done that. I have not. So I only can glean from my mentors and other friends that I have that have been in the business quite a bit longer than me. What I do know is that the people who will commit to mastery and commit to the everyday discipline will actually take over and take market share, because so many will get out of the business. And then the people that did it part-time are the people that, I heard it's easy, I'll get my real estate license. Like I got into it. Right. Yeah. I believe there's going to be room for growth for the right people, the right mindset. But that's mastery that's going to be needed there. And so honing in on skills, how to talk to people, how to listen, how to be a great communicator, and mastering that art and caring about people is so important. Now, where's the business going to come from? I've told my team there are so many people out there who love you and care about you and appreciate you and want to see you succeed. If you are not focused on making sure you're in relationship with those people and checking in on them and finding out how things are going for them, you're missing an opportunity, because that's where we can, it's so hard to get someone who you don't know to trust you and like you and want to work with you. But the people who are in our lives do really want to see us succeed, and they just need to know about it, right? They need to be taught, hey, I'm here and I sell real estate and I would love to work with you and I would love to be your referral person. So focusing on the people that are already in our world that we know with mastery is going to be the difference between, I think, the consistent people that either stay consistent or they thrive. Now, my goal is to thrive in a down market. My goal is to take market share. My goal is to bring more agents into our world and help them build their world within our world. Right. So I think that's who is going to maintain and thrive in the next market.
I mean, you said so many words there. I'm just like this, my heart's like just jumping out. Right.
I've spoken less. Sometimes I say too much.
No, this is amazing.
Okay.
I mean,
so just if you want to do like this anytime.
Commitment, skills, talking to people, remembering you have two ears and one mouth for a reason, listening really well, like developing those social skills. And it comes back to, I think everything that you kind of summarized right in there was really around emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Knowing what your strengths are, knowing, what's driving you, what's that motivation, or what are you moving away from? That's motivation as well. Moving away from something or moving towards something.
For sure.
But the social skills, being able to regulate your emotions, right? Being able to keep things in check, right? Not being an emotional mess. And then, empathy, being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I mean, that's really emotional intelligence, and everything you said just kind of, as I was just kind of smiling inside, I was like, you're nailing it, right? I mean, this is everything that I believe is absolutely critical right now. And it's the consistency to master those, right? How to have a conversation. You talk to a potential buyer, how to have the conversation, not getting thrown off with these BS objections, and being able to keep the conversation going, really listening. Same things with sellers, and where the business comes from. There's always opportunity. And you talked about the last downturn, and, for Kinder survived on short sales. He became the master at short sales. Nobody in our market did short sales. If you're doing short sales, don't do it. Just kick it over to Kinder. Let Kinder handle it. And for me, cool. There was just small pockets of new construction. And I went all in with the builder, took care of him, showed his houses, marketed them, just did everything, right? That's how I survived, right? There's always a niche. There's always an opportunity in any market climate. You just got to look for it and find it. And like you said, be committed to it and go all in.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you're talking about emotional intelligence. So about 18 months ago, I started seeing a counselor to learn how people work, because I think that learning how to communicate with different styles of personalities, and, we talk about the DISC personality, that kind of thing. It's just fascinating to me to see how people work, because what do we know to be true about people that buy and sell real estate? Oftentimes it's not because it's the greatest season of their life. And so it's hard things that are happening, right? It's death, it's divorce, it's birth, it's, job change. These are all very stressful things, whether they're good or bad. And learning how to just elevate the emotional intelligence and just the how of why people do the things they do, because people are people, and like managing people is a whole different ballgame than but it's the same thing, managing the emotions of your clients, managing the emotions of your team, and just always being committed to be better at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we all learned that growing up. I think it's maybe in our house we saw it or observed it, but to bring others into your world and really be able to get along and make each other better is a skill.
Yeah, it really is. And speaking of skills, and I think there's a huge void in the industry right now. And to me, the biggest void besides the skills, and even greater than that, is the leadership void. And there's a tremendous leadership void in this industry, and everything you're talking about is leadership, and you're leading at a high level. So, this is, if anybody takes anything away, I mean, it's all about leadership. And so the glue to leadership, and you said this right in the beginning, when we were talking about, the two things that are going to be critical for agents, besides mastering their skills, but do they care? And that's the glue to leadership, is care.
Yeah.
And I know you had mentioned something a little bit earlier, talking about you lead your top agents, your top agents lead your other agents. That's leaders creating leaders. And by definition, my belief is that how you tell a great leader is how many leaders they've created. And so developing that and creating that leadership leverage is what I'm hearing that you're doing in your organization. And that's why, like you said, you guys will thrive. You will take market share. You will continue to attract. And all agent attraction is leadership and being able to lead at the highest of levels. And so talk to us a little bit about how you've kind of structured that leverage, and hey, John, Michelle, I get it. I'm a solo agent. How do I create that leverage, right? How do I create the leadership leverage that's needed to be able to thrive into today's market?
Well, I don't think I'm perfect at it, and I really think I have a lot more to learn in my leadership journey. I've always been coached. I've always had a coach in real estate, if not multiple coaches. I have a coach in CrossFit, obviously. I go to them privately and do because of my schedule and that kind of thing. And so first of all, being imperfect is okay. And I think, yes, as a leader, you have to be strong and stay strong, but it's also okay to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't have it all figured out, but I promise you, I'm committed to becoming the best version of myself. And I'm committed to you to helping you lead a great life. And so the creating of other leaders is it's a really fascinating experience because, you know, everyone's on their own journey of how to lead. And I was just talking to Tina Call about this the other day. We were talking about how no one teaches you how to do this. No one teaches you how to be a leader. You know, there's books about leadership, about great leaders, but to me, the number one thing I've done is surround myself with other great leaders. And so I mentioned Tina, she's a great friend of mine, but even just the principal at my kids' elementary school, she's a phenomenal leader, and incorporating her into things in our team, and really reaching out into other areas of the community where I've seen other people lead and lead well, and plugging in there. And you asked me another question that I can't remember. What was it, John?
Just, you know, for you, it's creating that leverage amongst other leaders, and, you know, kind of flip it. You know, you've got a new agent on your team that, you know, just how do they create leverage in their life through.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it started when I was an individual agent, and anybody, I mean, we're all leaders. I always talk to my team as if we're all the leaders. You know, there are certain people that have leadership roles, but I think it starts with that, naming yourself a leader. I'm a leader of my family. I'm a leader of my business. I mean, and we talk about our agents a lot about leading the client, right? So you start there. People are going to work with a client's going to work with an agent who is, even if you're new, it doesn't matter. I remember being 9 months pregnant and brand new. And it was like an August sweaty day in Georgia, 100% humidity. And this man stood before me saying, I want to write an offer on this house. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to do that. Right. And it's such a great visual, because I thought to myself, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to tell him I'm figuring this out, and I will figure it out tonight. And we're going to get this house. And I did. But I had the confidence to lead myself to say to him, hey, look at this. And he said to me, this is the funniest story, Warren Schulman, I'll never forget it. He said to me, now, Michelle, this isn't my first rodeo. And I'm thinking, it's mine. I said, well, Warren, it's mine, but I promise you, I'm going to figure this out. Right. And I just threw caution to the wind. I think a lot of times we take ourselves so seriously that we're supposed to just know everything and have it all figured. I don't have it all figured out, and you don't have it all figured out. Here we are, you know? Yeah. So just having the confidence to lead yourself. And then when you need something or need help, reaching out and saying, I want to learn more about that, and putting yourself in a room, or maybe in friendship with someone who you would never feel okay doing, but doing it so that you can learn how to be more like them. And I think any of us can do that, no matter if we're an individual agent starting or we've been a team leader for 20 years. We all have things to learn.
Yeah, always. I mean, it's just the whole always staying curious, always trying to grow, learn, get better. And, you know, one of the key words that you keep throwing out that I want everybody to latch onto is commit.
Yeah.
What are you willing to commit to? And, you know, sometimes it's trial and error, right? And you're like, I don't know if I'm willing to commit to that. Okay, then, well, what are we willing to commit to moving forward? And just kind of trying certain things on and trying things. And it's a constant, it's progress, right? And it's not perfection.
No, for sure. I mean, I think it's so interesting to be 43 and new in CrossFit, because there's people in there who are obviously so strong, and they like eat all the right things and do all the right things. And they've been on this journey. And I was talking to my trainer the other day about it. And I said, does it ever get frustrating when people like come here day after day after day, and because it seemingly it's like, I'm not making progress, right? I am, obviously I'm stronger. I can deadlift with the best of them. But I said, does it feel frustrating when they don't like commit to because it's all about nutrition and don't want to hear it. And he said, no, it's not frustrating. It's my job to be here and walk alongside you. And he said, and it's very easy to compare yourself to someone who's been coming here 10 years. And that's just not even something you can do, because you're on a different journey. And so, you know, not playing that comparison game of like where they're at, you know, it's easy to do at EXP. Like, well, how do they have all these people they've attracted? How, you know, why didn't that happen to me? It's very easy to do that to one another. And yet we're all on this journey if we'll be vulnerable enough to say, like, just getting back up day after day and trying again, just like everybody. So
yeah, it's the whole, you know, gap and gain concept too, right? It's easy to start to
It's a great book.
compare yourself, right? Like I mean, I mean, it's a perfect example. And that's where we fall into, fall into that gap instead of just being like, shit, I just start this journey. Listen, let me look how far I've really come, right? And just
Yeah.
measuring that progress from where you started.
I mean, I was a hair model on Home Shopping Network in Germany. So, achievement. I've come a long way. True story.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. So, Michelle, kind of as we're wrapping up here, it's been fantastic conversation. I think
Yeah, thanks for having me.
delivering lots and lots of actionable items. We talked a little bit of defense, knowing your numbers, understanding where the money is, where the money's going, creating some awareness around, your relationship to money, and starting to play offense. Be committed to developing the skills required to survive in today's market. Come from a heart of because you genuinely care to help your clients, to help the other agents involved, to help the team that you're on. And then the leveraging leadership. And one of the things I would also kind of point out, even if you're a new team member on a team, leadership runs in a full circle. It's not that you have to be, and you have to have somebody that you lead, right? You can lead up, you can lead sideways. And one of the fascinating concepts is the plus, minus, and equal. And we all need a plus, minus, and equal in every equity of our life. And the plus is a mentor, a coach, somebody that's out ahead, maybe that we aspire to get to or to be. The minus is somebody that's a few steps behind us that we can mentor, coach, and lead and pour into. And you're like, well, I'm a brand new agent. Like, I haven't closed a deal yet. Well, like, did you get your real estate license? And you're like, well, yeah, I got through. Okay, well, then you can teach somebody how to go through your process of how you got your license, right? There's always a minus. And then the equal is somebody that we all need. We all need that accountability partner that's holding us accountable every day. They're riding side by side with us. And I think it's just fascinating, in all of those areas. And it's just like you talked about. I mean, you've got to coach in your fitness. You've got to coach in your business. You've got to coach in your relationship and your mindset. And it's always finding those plus, minus, and equals in all of the equities of your life that truly matter to you if you really want to grow.
Yeah, it's so smart. And I would say a lot of times I'll say to our team, raise your hand if you've ever been new, because I think it's really easy to forget that there are new people all around us and what it feels like to be new. And what it feels like to not know what you're doing and, just being in that part of your journey. And I always want people that come here to feel welcome and that they're in the same, even if they don't feel that they could borrow our confidence for themselves until they have their own confidence. And that's something I'm really proud that we do. But it's really important to remember that as a leader is to lend your confidence and the ability to others that when they need it. It doesn't hurt anybody to do that. When there's times when I need to be lifted up, there's times when I need to do the lifting. And so reaching out and reaching your hand up when you do need something is it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to be vulnerable in this industry. It's a surprising industry to me in a lot of ways. I didn't really know what I was getting into. One of the most surprising things was when we had success on our team, not everybody was really happy about that. And I remember thinking like, I'm just like a school teacher like y'all. Like I'm not doing anything magical. I'm just getting up day after day and trying again for my family and just remembering like we're all in this just to take care of our families and provide a good life for them and to show a little grace in those moments. Because I think in this market, it's one of two things. You're either going to find that or you don't, because that's just when, like we talked about with the relationship with money, when you get money, it's more of what you were. When you don't have money, it's more of what you already were. I remember not having anything in Germany. Like we had these 2 suitcases and my husband had all this student loan debt because he'd gone to college and come from a very, very just interesting background and parents that really couldn't help him go to college. And they were in Texarkana, Texas. I know you're from Texas. And just understanding that, we're all in this to try and live this great life. And real estate is just a vehicle to do that. It's an incredible vehicle. I feel so blessed to be able to have it. So yeah, in this market, I think it's really important that we show a little bit of grace to one another and compassion, because a lot of people are going through things right now.
Yeah. Well said. Michelle, you're amazing. Thank you for jumping in, carving
Yeah.
out some time to pour back into the Honey Badger Nation and really,
Yeah.
stand for what this whole these 5-year run of these conversations that we've had is all about. And it's just about, the abundance, giver's gain, mindset and mentality. And I can't thank you enough for jumping in and dropping a wealth of knowledge and information back into the community. For those of you guys listening, make sure you guys reach out to Michelle, give her lots of love for really pouring into everybody today. But Michelle, if they want to connect, what's the best way to connect with you?
Oh gosh, you can find me on Facebook. Michelle Whitmer Humes is my name on there. Same on Instagram. My email is michelle@michellehumesgroup.com. If there's anything I can do for you guys, I'm happy to lend myself out. And I don't really have it all figured out. I think that yeah, I mean, John, you said all these authors and names and things that I just think, oh my gosh, you're brilliant. But I will do whatever I can to help others. And I'm committed to EXP is such an incredible community and the Honey Badger Nation as well. So anything I can do to help, I would be happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.